Hello S3 and welcome to our third media analysis lesson, and we are continuing to look at posters just now before moving on to trailers later on. Just as a reminder then, last week we looked at audience and purpose, form and layout and use of colour and images. This week we're looking at persuasive language and group discussion skills. Following on, we'll start looking at trailers and camera shots and angles, soundtrack and sound effects, before returning to audience and purpose again, and then preparing for our group discussion assessment. If you've joined the live starter, you'll know that you were asked to complete a quiz. What I would like you to do now is write down the score that you got for your quiz, because it's just really nice to have everything all together in one place. Okay, remember it was a self-marking quiz, so you should be able to find your score pretty easily. So pause the video, do that now. Or equally, if you haven't joined the live lesson, you will find the quiz as a separate assignment. So again, you can do that assignment just now and add in your score. On you go. Moving on then, and we are going to look at persuasive language. And you should hopefully remember that you looked at persuasive language not only as part of Roué Reading for Understanding, Analysis and Evaluation, which, just as a reminder, these lessons are an extension of, but also when we did our persuasive essays to do with keeping dolphins and whales in captivity. So what I would like you to do now is pause the video and just note down the different techniques that hopefully you can remember covering in the past that you would use to persuade someone. So pause the video, do that now. And what we're going to do just now though is just go over some examples for you, okay? So what techniques might you see in a poster in particular? Well, you might see a pun. Now, we haven't really talked enough about puns. Some people love them. And they're quite often in sort of cheesy jokes. So for an example, what happened to the guy who sued over his missing luggage? He lost his case. That is a pun. And it's usually there to create light humour, so something to just make you smile a little bit. And remember that if you create humour and make someone smile, then you're more likely to draw them in. So it doesn't necessarily seem like a persuasive technique to begin with, but it's all about building a rapport with the audience. And that tends to make people just feel generally more positive towards whatever you're writing or doing or producing, and therefore persuaded to go along with whatever purpose you're trying to achieve. We went over alliteration not that long ago, and we talked about the fact that it's usually used to help you remember something or to draw you in. Facts can be really important to underline why the main information is so important. So for example, if they said, if the main information was stop smoking now, that might persuade you, that might not, but actually saying all the facts about the dangers of smoking might actually be more persuasive than the original title. Equally though, opinions can be very persuasive as well if they're from a credible source. So for example, if there's a really well-known film critic saying that he or she or they absolutely loved a particular film, then that might be more persuasive to other people. You might have a really obscure comic book adaptation coming out, but then you hear of this really well-known, respected comic book artist saying, oh my goodness, this is the best thing I've ever seen. You might be more persuaded to go along with it. And so if they put that person's opinion on the poster, that might be more persuasive. Now, hopefully you'll remember rhetorical questions, and those are questions that don't require an answer, because the assumption is you've already agreed with them, which is why they tend to be quite persuasive. The flip side to puns, as I said, were quite light and created humour and engaged you that way. But the other way you could engage people is through emotive language. So engaging them by shocking them or making them feel disgust. And they're more likely to then want to read more and agree with whatever you're talking about, because you've shocked them so much that how could they not agree with what you're saying? And another one that seems to be used more and more these days is directly addressing the audience, that, you know, the breaking the fourth wall and all that. And it can make the audience feel involved. If anyone's ever seen Deadpool or seen posters and trailers for that, there tends to be a lot of addressing the audience. Or equally, if you think about the tagline for the film It, You'll Float Too. So it's directly addressing you, and that could completely creep you out. Remember, I know I've talked about this really quickly. You can rewind and listen to me talk about it again. And remember that this list is in the slides that's in your OneNote. So even you could either screenshot this just now if you paused it, or just wait till you're onto your OneNote page and you should be able to see it from there. Your task then is to look through these different film posters, and all I want you to do is try and identify at least one persuasive language technique that you can find in that poster. And that's all I want you to do. Persuasive language only. You don't need to talk about colour or imagery or anything like that today, just persuasive language. Okay? And then I just want you to add in the technique into the box beside the poster. Apologies that some of them are slightly blurry, and if you can't see one in particular, you could write that if you really want to. But I think I've deliberately picked ones where the persuasive language technique is quite obvious. Okay? Let's move on then to think about poster analysis as a whole. Now, next week, you are going to be given a quick task of analysing an unseen film poster. And when you're doing that, or next lesson, sorry, not next week, remember that you start with audience and purpose, you move on to form and layout, you then think about the psychology of colour, the use of images, try and see if you can spot any persuasive language techniques. Also put everything into the idea of genre, so what category of film is this, and then go back to audience and purpose. And the reason why is if you're asked to explain why a poster is effective or ineffective, well, if it hits its target audience and it achieves the purpose of persuading the target audience to come and see it, then it's probably a very effective poster. But some posters are either too weird or they don't actually hit their target audience. I can't think of one off the top of my head clearly, but they're not always effective, and it's because of audience and purpose. So always go back to that. The other ones in there, like form and layout and colour and images, are how they achieve audience and purpose. But when you're thinking about if it's effective or not, did it actually achieve what it set out to achieve, and did it hit its target audience? So let's recap what we've done today then. We recapped colour and audience and purpose by using the quiz team's assignment. Please complete that if you haven't done so already. We then talked about persuasive language, and then we thought about the things to consider when analysing an unseen poster. So as I mentioned, in lesson 4, you'll be given an unseen poster to analyse using all the techniques that we've talked about, and we'll also be focusing on our group discussion skills. Bye for now.